Zhou Wen had been searching for the tiny palm symbol the entire time, but he hadn't found it. He had scrutinized the building that housed the city gates countless times, but he had failed to find it. However, other than the entrance, there were only city walls with no sign of the tiny palm symbol. Is the tiny palm symbol in Providence Palace? Zhou Wen looked at the tightly shut door of Providence Palace and thought, if it were really in Providence Palace, that would be troublesome. Every year, the Providence Palace only opens its gates once a day. However, the counselors have repeatedly exhorted us not to enter. In the past, there were experts at the epic stage who had entered the Providence Palace on this day without being able to exit. Furthermore, I'm only at the mortal stage. Just as he was feeling disappointed, he suddenly heard the melodious and solemn music from within Providence Palace. Accompanied by the music, it was as if the city gates that had been sealed shut for centuries were slowly opening. The city gate was filled with a brilliant purple glow, so blinding that it was hard for anyone to look straight at it. Before Zhou Wen and company could see what stood beyond the city gates, the underground space suddenly emitted a blinding light that resembled holy light from the spatial rifts. Then, they saw an inconceivable sight. They saw large and small boxes flying out from the spatial rifts. There were exquisite wooden boxes, boxes filled with antiquity, and green and snow-white jade boxes. There were also large metal chests. There were also gold and silver boxes with gems embedded in them. They looked dazzling and exquisite. The girl stared at them, almost entranced. There were many gift boxes. In just a moment, more than 1,000 boxes flew towards the entrance in a line. Just like the legend said, there seemed to be invisible ghosts dragging them into the entrance. There are so many boxes. How should I choose one? Feng Qian frowned. You can only rely on luck. There's no other way. Hui Haifeng took a large stride towards a golden box with all sorts of gems embedded in it. He took out his token and lightly tapped the small golden box with the token. The small golden box stopped floating in midair, having lost its support as it fell to the ground. Hui Haifeng immediately reached out and held onto the small golden box, then returned. He was very decisive. Zhou Wen looked at the gift boxes that numbered more than 10,000. He really didn't know which one to choose from. At that moment, Wang Lu said to Zhou Wen, "My luck has always been good. If you need it, I can help you choose one." When Wang Lu said this, she was brimming with confidence. It was as if she would definitely be able to choose something good. All right, I'll leave it to you then. Zhou Wen was extremely disappointed having failed at finding the tiny palm symbol. Choosing a box held little meaning for him. If he couldn't download the Providence Palace dungeon, the probability of choosing a gift box with a companion egg in it was just too low. To be able to choose a gift box with a high-level companion egg was even more difficult. Zhou Wen never had luck with gambling, so it didn't matter whether he chose it or not. He couldn't be bothered to waste his time and energy and casually threw the token to Wang Lu. Even if he had to choose it himself, he could only randomly pick one. It was no different from letting Wang Lu choose one. He might as well save some time to see if he could find the tiny palm symbol. Anyone else need my help? Wang Lu looked at the others and asked. Since we are already here, it's all down to luck anyway. It's better to choose one yourself, Wei Ji said with a smile. The others obviously liked to hold their own fate in their hands, so no one planned on letting Wang Lu choose for them. Other than Hui Haifeng, who had already made his selection, the others began to observe the boxes, hoping that they could find some clues. Zhou Wen was also observing, but he was looking into Providence Palace to see if he could find the tiny palm symbol. Unfortunately, it was filled with a screen of resplendent divine light. All he could see was gift boxes flying in, but he couldn't see what was on the inside. However, Wang Lu had no intention of seriously choosing. She treated the two tokens as darts and threw them into the row of boxes. With two clangs, 2 boxes were knocked to the ground by her random throw. Wang Lu grinned as she ran over and carried the 2 gift boxes back, handing one to Zhou Wen. The gift box was carved out of wood. It was about 30 centimeters wide on all sides and there were cloud patterns engraved on it. Other than that, there was nothing else. Zhou Wen wasn't in the mood to see what was inside. After receiving the box, he stuffed it into his bag and continued gazing into the palace. Aren't you going to open it? Wang Lu said. There's no need. It doesn't matter what it is, Zhou Wen said casually. Wang Lu was a little displeased that Zhou Wen didn't care about it. Seeing that everyone was choosing their boxes and that no one was paying any attention to them, she said to Zhou Wen, "Don't think that I just randomly chose it. My luck is really good. The items I inside will definitely be good." Yes, thank you, Zhou Wen said perfunctorily. Wang Lu was incensed when she saw Zhou Wen's perfunctory manner. She glared at him hatefully, but Zhou Wen had been observing the situation inside Providence Palace the entire time without giving her a second glance. If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have helped you choose. Wang Lu pouted and resentfully retreated to the side. She didn't even have the mood to open her gift box to see what was inside. Even after they had all made their choices, one after another, and the counselors had led them out of Providence Palace, Zhou Wen still hadn't found the tiny palm symbol. He was extremely disappointed. None of them had the intention to open their gift boxes on the spot. Zhou Wen also took the box that Wang Lu had chosen for him back to his dorm. I wonder what it is. Zhou Wen opened it up. Indeed, it was the same as he imagined. There were no companion eggs or dimensional crystals inside, but a strange old bronze flask. It can't be a chamber pot, right? Span Joe and looked at the bronze flask inside the box, and it looked like one, no matter how he looked at Span it. But from the looks of it, it seemed to be a little too small. It was probably not suited for adults. Furthermore, the style looked more exquisite and it had smooth curves as if it did not match the style of the East District's ancient style. Joe Wen switched on his ordinary phone and checked the internet. Soon, he learned what it was. It was a handheld oil lamp from ancient Arabia. From the looks of the oil lamp, it should be an antique. I wonder how much I can sell it for. Joe Wen muttered to himself as he took out the bronze lamp and wiped the dust he saw on it with a piece of tissue paper. After a few strokes, the bronze lamp suddenly trembled, and the patterns on it began to glow strangely. Article 132 of 1597. The pattern on the lamp's body flickered as swirls spun in circles. A flame was spontaneously ignited at the mouth of the lamp, giving off an inexplicable demonic charm as it danced. It was like a seductive woman twisting her waist while dancing. Joe Wen's gaze was attracted by the strange flame as though it was the most beautiful woman in the world. He couldn't help but become engrossed, unable to shift his gaze away from the flame. He was extremely determined, so when he felt that something was amiss, he forcefully shifted his gaze away from the flame. However, when his gaze moved away from the flame, he was attracted by the shimmering patterns on the bronze lamp. Only then did Joe Wen realize that the patterns weren't simple patterns. Instead, they were ancient words. The demonic powers contained in them were countless times stronger than the flame, making him unconsciously attracted. How is this happening? Joe Wen's fingers on his left hand suddenly moved as though they were playing a piano. However, his mind hadn't willed his fingers to make any movements. Joe Wen wanted to use his other hand to control his left hand, but his other hand's fingers moved along with it. Soon, it wasn't only his fingers, but Joe Wen's entire body. He moved uncontrollably in an irregular fashion, something he realized to be dancing. Joe Wen had never come into contact with dancing, nor was he interested in dancing. He didn't even watch dancing shows, but he was now like a professional dancer. His body danced with the rhythm of the music, making all sorts of moves he had never thought of before. And no matter how he looked at it, he could see that it was a woman's dance moves. They were enchanting and charming, light and elegant. However, to have a man dance it made him look extremely comical. If Li Xuan were here to see him, he would probably be rolling on the ground laughing. Joe Wen tried his best to control himself, but it was useless. He had repeatedly switched a few primordial energy arts, but they were all useless. His body was squirming more and more intensely, and there were also many coquettish moves included. Soon, Joe Wen discovered that his actions were identical to the flickering of the lamp. It was as though he was a puppet controlled by the flame. Damn it. What the hell is this? Joe Wen felt as though he was going crazy. As his dance sped up, the Lost Immortal Sutra, which automatically circulated, slowed down. As the Lost Immortal Sutra slowed down, Joe Wen's body gradually slowed down. When the Lost Immortal Sutra completely stopped circulating, Joe Wen's body also stopped twisting. However, the next second, the primordial energy in his body circulated in a frenzy, but it was no longer the path of the Lost Immortal Sutra. Instead, it was another primordial energy art that Joe Wen had never cultivated before. The patterns on the oil lamp are also a primordial energy art. Joe Wen was astonished but also somewhat delighted. This primordial energy art was very odd. It was different from anything Joe Wen had previously come into contact with. It seemed to have countless odd transformations, and at times it was light and graceful, at other times as forceful as a storm. It made Joe Wen have the urge to tear through the air and dance. Time ticked by. By the time Joe Wen regained control of his body, he had already mastered the primordial energy art. The oil lamp that had been floating in the air suddenly lost its radiance and fell to the ground. It returned to its old and damaged state. Joe Wen was just about to pick up the oil lamp when he suddenly felt something amiss with his body. The primordial energy art he had just mastered instantly dissipated as the Lost Immortal Sutra began to circulate again. However, the circulation this time was different from the previous one. Primordial energy flowed through his body like blood circling his body. Boom. Joe Wen felt his brain buzz as a voice resounded incessantly. If God opposes me, I will slay God. If an immortal opposes me, I will cull the immortal. No exchanges with God. No acquaintances with immortals. I am me. The voice was unbridled and savage, but it also had a terrifying power that made his blood boil. It was as if something was stirring in one's heart, eager to poke a hole in the sky. This voice wasn't unfamiliar to Joe Wen. Over the countless nights he had cultivated in the Lost Immortal Sutra, the voice had kept whispering into his ear. However, in the past, he couldn't hear the voice clearly. Today, he finally heard what that voice was saying. It was a woman's voice, but it had a heart-stopping aura. It was as if all living beings from the various worlds would fall prostrate at her feet. Although Joe Wen only heard a voice, he couldn't help but envision a scene. Countless deities prostrating themselves on the ground, bowing towards a woman as though on a pilgrimage. Unfortunately, this was just Joe Wen's imagination and was able to see the woman's face clearly. He felt that her bearing was incomparable. She was lofty, but she wasn't as holy as an immortal or Buddha. She had a killing aura. The voice in his mind became weaker and weaker, as if it was about to disperse. In the end, it was almost inaudible. Zhou Wen vaguely heard a sentence that sounded a little different from the repeated sentence he had just heard. My return will spell the death of all immortals. However, the voice at the end was so soft that he didn't hear the complete sentence. Boom. The lost immortal sutra in his body seemed to explode as all the cells seemed to bind together. It made Zhou Wen suspect if his body had self-destructed. Falling. Constantly falling. Zhou Wen felt as though his consciousness had plunged into the deep sea as it constantly plummeted. Finally, his consciousness was completely submerged in the darkness. Ever since he had mastered the lost immortal sutra, he hadn't had a proper sleep. Every time he fell asleep, no matter where he was or what time it was, there would be a voice whispering into his ear akin to scripture chantings by Buddha or a devil's enticements. Together with the sleep paralysis, anyone else would have gone berserk. Zhou Wen grinding every day was certainly to raise his strength, but it also included his thoughts of trying to avoid sleeping. Up to this day, the feeling of being haunted by ghosts finally completely dissipated. Zhou Wen slept soundly as though nothing in the world was more blissful than having a good sleep. When he woke up and stretched his back, he felt so comfortable that he almost moaned in delight. All his cells seemed to emit comfortable cheers. Zhou Wen pressed his palm down on the bed to sit up, but when he pressed down, his body bounced up, slamming his head into the ceiling. Half his head was inside the ceiling made of steel and cement, leaving him dangling from it. Article 133 of 1597. Chapter 133 Exchange Student. Pui. Pui. Zhou Wen spat out the cement in his mouth and looked at his hands in surprise. What's going on? After some thought, he recalled what had happened yesterday and seemed to realize something. He quickly took out his mysterious phone and pricked his finger with a needle, dripping a drop of fresh blood onto the screen. The blood quickly coagulated into the blood-colored avatar. Zhou Wen looked at its stats and was overjoyed. He had indeed advanced to the legendary stage. He eagerly checked the blood-colored avatar's attributes only to be left somewhat puzzled. Zhou Wen. Age 16 years. Level Legendary. Legendary Life Providence, Sigh of the King. Strength 12. Speed 12. Constitution 12. Primordial Energy 12. Primordial Energy Art, Lost Immortal Sutra. Primordial Energy Skill, Astral Suction Palm, Astral/Blade, Astral Suction Palm. Companion Beast, Truth Listener, Banana Fairy, Mutated Lotus Flower Ant, Silver-Winged Flying Ant. His stats and primordial energy art were considered normal, but his legendary life providence was a little strange. Typically, ordinary people weren't able to see their attributes in the game like Zhou Wen, but after advancing to legendary, they were able to sense the basic abilities of their legendary life providence and know how it could be used. However, Zhou Wen couldn't sense what his life providence could be used for. All he could sense was that his life providence's powers needed certain conditions to be triggered. As for the triggering conditions, Zhou Wen only had a vague sense which wasn't too clear. When he looked at the additional note regarding Sigh of the King in-game, there was only one sentence, Sigh of the King, it is endless sinking. Zhou Wen didn't understand the meaning of the annotation, so he was momentarily unsure whether his life providence was good or bad. However, being able to advance to the legendary stage was ultimately a boon. It meant that Zhou Wen could finally incubate a legendary companion egg without any reservations. He could also absorb high-valued dimensional crystals to raise his stats. As for killing epic creatures, Zhou Wen didn't have a blind sense of self-importance. The difference between the epic and legendary stages was far greater than the difference between the legendary and mortal stages. The weakest epic could easily kill the strongest legendary. It wasn't only because an epic's attributes were higher, but also because an epic's life possessed a form of soul protection. They were completely different from legendaries, making it an extremely difficult task to defeat an epic at the legendary stage. Whatever. I'll increase my stats first. Zhou Wen picked up the mysterious phone. He wanted to enter the game and use some high-valued dimensional crystals to raise his stats. Otherwise, even if he had advanced to the legendary stage, he would still be one of the weakest. Li Xuan and In Jing had their family's support, so it was very simple for them to raise their stats. They just needed to use the dimensional crystals prepared by their families, but Zhou Wen needed to rely on himself. Before he could launch a dungeon on his phone, the doorbell rang. Old Zhou, what treasure did you choose from Providence Palace? It can't be that your luck was so bad to choose a urinal or something, right? Li Xuan didn't dare enter the room as he looked straight in. When he saw the antelope sleeping on the couch, he immediately retracted his head. See for yourself. Zhou Wen invited Li Xuan into the house. No, no, no. I'm not going in. I'm not here to see the treasure you chose. Counselor Wang Fei got me to tell you that she wants you to see her. Li Xuan quickly shrank back again. Why is the counselor looking for me? Zhou Wen was puzzled. She didn't say, but I'm guessing it has something to do with the exchange students with from Covenant College, Li Xuan said. What do you mean? Zhou Wen didn't understand. Covenant College was a famous school in the West District and was worlds apart from Sunset College. Even if there was an exchange student, it shouldn't have anything to do with him. Li Xuan smiled and said, "There's an exchange student from Covenant College here in Sunset College to study for a period of time. I heard that the exchange student is quite extraordinary. He's from one of the 6 League Heroes families. He's famous at Covenant College and is considered as the heir to the 6 heroes. He's the most likely person to reach the level of the 6 heroes." What has this got to do with me? Zhou Wen frowned. Since it's an exchange student, they will interact with students from our college after arriving. In order to not lose face, the school will definitely let the best students interact with that fellow. Having entered the top 10 at the comprehensive test, it's normal for the school to give you such an important mission. However, I don't think it's any of your business. After all, your ranking in the top 10 is too low. As long as you stand out, it will definitely be Huang Ji, Wei Ji, and In Jing who will deal with that exchange student. Just watch the show, Li Xuan said. Zhou Wen thought that it made sense and went to Wang Fei's office. It was just as Li Xuan guessed. Wang Fei informed him that an exchange student from Covenant College was coming to study at Sunset College. "Zhou Wen, do you know who the exchange student is?" Wang Fei asked. "Is this related to me?" Zhou Wen said indifferently. "Of course it has something to do with you. Otherwise, why would I especially summon you here? If it was just an ordinary exchange student, you wouldn't be needed." Wang Fei paused. "The student's name is John. Like Liz, he comes from a family with the last name Cape." "Liz?" Zhou Wen frowned slightly. Wang Fei continued, "John is Liz's younger brother, but he's different from the poorly talented Liz. His talent is almost comparable to the hero from the Cape family. Not only did he inherit the physique of the hero, but he also obtained an extremely powerful life providence when he advanced to the legendary stage. In the West, he has the title of a saint." "So what?" Zhou Wen said indifferently. "Do you need me to go into the details between Liz and you? Given John's status, even if he came to Sunset College, he wouldn't purposely challenge a mortal. However, you happen to be ranked in the top 10 at the comprehensive test as a mortal stage. This gave John an excuse to challenge you. When the time comes, even if he doesn't dare to do anything to you in Sunset College, it will be a disgrace to both you and Sunset College if you were to suffer a terrible defeat." Wang Fei paused for a moment before saying, "That's why the school hopes that you can go home for a few days and not give John a chance to challenge you. If he's really out to get me, won't he come knocking on my door even if I were to hide in my dorm?" Zhou Wen said. "It's all right. You can return to the Yin family home to rest for a few days. The school will approve your leave," Wang Fei said. "There's no need." Zhou Wen directly rejected it. He definitely wasn't going to seek protection from the Yin family. "Zhou Wen, if you really had the strength to be in the top 10, the school doesn't mind you fighting with John. It doesn't matter even if you lose. However, I think you should know better than me how you ended up in the top 10. The school didn't hold it against you for the sake of the Yin family. However, you should know that your current strength isn't enough to represent Sunset College's top standards. It'd be meaningless to accept such a challenge," Wang Fei said. Article 134 of 1597. Chapter 134 Mutated Demonized General. "Counselor, although my strength isn't enough to represent the college, there's no need for me to be afraid of John, much less escape." Zhou Wen bowed slightly to Wang Fei before turning to leave the office. Ignoring the fact that Zhou Wen had already advanced to the legendary stage, even if he wasn't John's match, he still wouldn't choose to flee to the Yin family residence. This fellow's surname isn't In, but why is he as stubborn as the Yin siblings? Wang Fei watched Zhou Wen leave the office and couldn't help but worry. After Zhou Wen returned to his dorm, he launched an instant dungeon and began grinding crazily. He wanted to spawn some high-level dimensional crystals and quickly raise his attributes. Ding! After killing a silver-winged flying ant, a 14-valued speed crystal dropped. The blood-colored avatar absorbed the speed crystal and his speed increased to 14. Ding! After killing a mutated Buddha heart lotus, a 13-valued primordial energy crystal dropped. The blood-colored avatar absorbed it and his primordial energy increased to 13. Ding! After killing a skeleton general companion egg dropped. Zhou Wen unhesitatingly incubated it and obtained a skeleton general companion beast. However, the companion beast's stats and skills were relatively average. While grinding the lotus flower cave, Zhou Wen was once again lucky enough to spawn a fairy monkey companion egg. When he incubated it, the stats weren't too bad, but they weren't considered excellent grade stats. Since it wasn't an excellent grade companion beast and its skills weren't anything special, Zhou Wen decided to attempt a fusion when he saw that the skeleton general and the fairy monkey had a compatibility score of 57%, which was a rather high success rate. However, Zhou Wen was extremely disappointed. The fusion failed as the two companion beasts disintegrated simultaneously. Zhou Wen knew how lucky his mutated lotus flower ant had been at succeeding from the recent fusion failures. The chances were about the same as winning the lottery. Thankfully, Zhou Wen was able to keep grinding dungeons. His chances of dropping a companion egg were much higher than the average person. After persisting for an entire day and night, Zhou Wen's stats experienced a significant boost. His strength and constitution had reached 16 points. His speed and primordial energy were slightly weaker and had only increased to 15 points. This made Zhou Wen clearly feel that his body was much stronger. During this process, he managed to raise his Dragon Gate Fairy skill to rank 9, raising his movement technique to its limit. Rank 9 was a standard primordial energy skill limit. There was no way to continue raising it with primordial energy skill crystals. In the past, rank 9 was the highest Zhou Wen could reach. However, with the precedent of Ashen Palm, he knew that rank 9 wasn't the limit and that there was room for improvement. However, that required him to train and figure it out himself before being able to reach Dragon Gate Fairy skill's limit of rank 10. It was unknown how many times he had entered Tiger Cage Pass dungeon before he encountered a demonized general with the word fist engraved on its helmet. It delighted Zhou Wen. Seeing the demonized general turn golden in color like a golden armored god of war, Zhou Wen controlled the blood-colored avatar to charge forward instead of retreating, clashing head-on with the fist demonized general. Now that Zhou Wen had advanced to the legendary stage, his speed had increased significantly. Coupled with the silver-winged flying ant's silver wings, his speed was no longer slower than the fist demonized general's. He easily dodged its strange spears. Rust before slashing at its neck with his hand wrapped in the lotus flower bracer. With a clang, Zhou Wen's present strength combined with the lotus flower bracer was still unable to damage the fist demonized general. Instead, his opponent balled its other hand into a fist and threw a punch at the blood-colored avatar's stomach. Astral Suction Palm. Zhou Wen guessed that the Astral Suction Palm could restrain the fist demonized general's primordial energy skill. Unsure if it was true, he gave it a try. The strength of the fist demonized general's fist was extremely domineering, as though it had gathered all of its energy into one point. Even the mutated lotus flower ant at the same level would explode with one punch. The astral suction palm appeared nothing powerful with how soft and weak it was. The instant his palm clashed with the fist, Zhou Wen felt a strange feeling. His astral suction palm seemed to be able to guide the forces of the demonized general's fist. With a thought, Zhou Wen pulled and pushed with his astral suction palm, directing the demonized general's domineering punch right back into the other side of his enemy's chest. With a boom, the armor on his body shattered and blood spewed out. Zhou Wen was delighted when he saw this. He controlled the blood-colored avatar to charge forward, penetrating the wound on the demonized general's chest with his palm which wore the lotus flower bracer. This impact burst the heart inside. Killed fist demonized general. Discovered companion egg. Zhou Wen was still immersed in the excitement of his killing the fist demonized general for the first time when he saw the system notification appear. He couldn't help but be pleasantly surprised. Upon careful look, he saw a black-colored companion egg drop on the ground. He hurriedly ordered the blood-colored avatar to pick it up, but seeing its attributes, he couldn't help but find it odd. Mutated demonized general, legendary. Legendary life providence, malignant general. Strength, 19. Speed, 17. Constitution, 18. Primordial energy, 18. Talent skill, astral fist, demon flame spear, demon rider summon. Companion form, none. How can a mutated demonized general not have a companion form? Zhou Wen found it odd, but its stats were really high. It was considered a top-notch existence among legendaries. He directly incubated the mutated demonized general since he had no plans on giving such an excellent grade companion beast as food. He summoned the incubated mutated demonized general, and it was exactly the same as the one in the game. A burly demonic general riding on a red horse with a strange spear in his hand. With one charge, the strange spear in its hand could knock over a large number of demonized soldiers. It was extremely powerful. Another demonized general. Zhou Wen was delighted. With the boost provided by the demonized general skills, far greater than the mutated lotus flower ant and the silver-winged flying ant, it was good as a vanguard. Taking advantage of the excitement of having a new companion beast, Zhou Wen continued grinding. He wanted to raise his stats in one fell swoop. It would be best if he could raise everything to 18. Perhaps due to luck, Zhou Wen encountered another mutated demonized general when he respawned again and went to Tiger Cage Pass. However, the demonized general's helmet had the word blade engraved on it this time. He didn't attack himself, allowing the fist demonized general to charge forward. Due to the effectiveness of the fist demonized general against the blade demonized general, it killed the blade demonized general with one charge. The blade demonized general's astral slash blade was shattered by the astral punch and was made completely useless. Exceeding Zhou Wen's expectations, the blade demonized general once again dropped a companion egg. Having obtained 2 mutated demonized general companion eggs consecutively, this was a probability that Zhou Wen found unbelievable. Mutated demonized general, legendary. Legendary life providence, malignant general. Strength, 19. Speed, 18. Constitution, 17. Primordial energy, 16. Talent skill, astral slash blade, demon flame spear, demon rider summon. Companion form, none. Article 135 of 1597. Chapter 135 Demonic Words. The blade demonized general's attributes were similar to the fist demonized general's. Only its talent skills were somewhat different. Zhou Wen looked at the system notification and discovered that the compatibility score between the two demonized generals was as high as 88%. It tempted him greatly, and in the end, he couldn't help but tap on the fusion button. Ding! When he heard the system's chime, Zhou Wen's heart couldn't help but pound. He was even a little nervous. Fortunately, a compatibility score of 88% was as true as it gets. The fusion succeeded and produced a new demonized general. Just by looking at the new demonized general's appearance, it seemed to be even more ferocious and domineering. It wore red vested armor and its eyes were fiercely glowing red. It looked like a ferocious general in a raging inferno. And the word engraved on its helmet was neither blade nor first, but the word demon. Mutated demonized general, legendary. Legendary life providence, malignant general. Strength, 19. Speed, 18. Constitution, 18. Primordial energy, 18. Talent skill, astral slash blade, astral fist, demon flame spear, demon rider summon. Companion form, none. These stats are a little sick. Furthermore, it also has the astral slash blade and astral fist skills. If I were to obtain another paper demonized general companion beast and fuse with it, would it result in an excellent grade with all three skills? Zhou Wen thought to himself. However, it wasn't easy to have two mutated demonized general companion eggs drop. It was unknown how long it would take to have another one drop. Thankfully, Zhou Wen had to grind Tiger Cage Pass dungeon every day, so he wasn't in a rush. There were always opportunities. The mutated demonized general was good at the offensive and defensive. It killed everything in its way, and together with the mutated lotus flower ant and silver-winged flying ant, they formed a team that could kill monsters from both air, land, and sea. Most of the time, the blood-colored avatar didn't even need to move a finger to kill the dimensional creatures. With my current strength and truth listener at the legendary stage, can I try clearing Ant City? Zhou Wen had always been obsessed with the golden beam of light in Ant City. However, previously he had been lacking in strength and couldn't make much progress. Now that he had advanced to the legendary stage and had 4 top-notch legendary companion beasts, it seemed like he could make an attempt. Old Zhou, we can finally register our own club. What do you think it should be called? Do you think it's better to call it the God of Combat Alliance or Invincible Club? Li Xuan walked into the living room excitedly. Up to you. Zhou Wen was grinding Ant Nest, so he didn't have the capacity to care. Furthermore, he wasn't obsessive-compulsive. He would accept any name. Don't mind. This is our club. There's meaning only if we think of names together. Those two aren't good. What do you think about Xuanwen? Our names are both in it. Others can tell that it's our club, Li Xuan said. Sure. Zhou Wen nodded while gaming the blood-colored avatar had already rushed to the periphery of Ant City. Then that's it. Let's register for the Xuanwen Club. Li Xuan pulled Zhou Wen out excitedly. Zhou Wen had no choice but to follow him out. But when they arrived, they realized that setting up a club didn't just require filling in an application form. They had to gather at least 5 people to submit the application to establish a club. Why do we need so many people? The two of us are good enough to beat everyone in the world. Li Xuan's heart stirred as he looked at Zhou Wen and asked, it won't be easy to find people now. Almost all the senior students have already joined clubs. After more than a month, most of the freshmen have been roped in. It will be very difficult to find suitable people. Your 2 high school classmates seem to be interested in our club. Why don't you rope them in to make up the numbers? I'm not sure if they have joined other clubs or not, Zhou Wen said. Then let's make a call and ask. Do you have the phone number of that beautiful woman named Fang something? Li Xuan urged. Zhou Wen had no choice but to take out his ordinary phone and call Fang Ruoxi while gaming with one hand. Fuck, you even have a game-only phone and a phone for calls. Bro, you sure are extravagant, Li Xuan teased. Zhou Wen ignored him and called Fang Ruoxi. He heard her voice and asked, hello, is this Fang Ruoxi? It's me. Li Xuan and I established a club. If you and Tian Xingdong haven't joined other clubs, why don't you consider it? Zhou Wen said. We haven't joined anything yet. I heard that you were setting up a club, so we have been waiting for your invitation, Fang Ruoxi replied with a smile. Alright, we are still short of one person. I'll contact you after we find everyone. Zhou Wen hung up after making an agreement with Fang Ruoxi. Quite swell of this old classmate of yours. She's pretty and pure, and she has some feelings for you. You have to act as early as possible. Otherwise, she'll be contaminated by this mixing bowl known as university, Li Xuan said with a smile. Don't spout nonsense. She's just an old classmate, Zhou Wen said. Now we have 4 people. We are still short of 1. Who do you think we should get? Li Xuan tugged at his hair in frustration. Is it that difficult for young Master Li to find someone? Zhou Wen looked at Li Xuan in confusion. It's really not difficult to find someone. Just a simple call and I can get a dozen or 2. However, I'm afraid that there might be my brother's people among them. I'm more at ease with people you recruit, Li Xuan said. I don't know anyone, Zhou Wen suddenly thought of something as he asked Li Xuan, do you know Gu Dian? Of course I know him. How can I not know this person? He's the school's most problematic person. He beat up a senior when he had just started school. He's a person who only recognizes money. As long as he's paid, he will do anything, Li Xuan said as he looked at Zhou Wen in puzzlement. Why are you asking about him? Has he joined a club? Zhou Wen asked. Let's not even talk about him having thoughts of joining a club, even if he does, no one will want him. Who knows when he might beat up the people in his club? That would be such a joke. Wait. Don't tell me you want to recruit him. Li Xuan widened his eyes. I think he's not bad. If there's really no other candidate, we can give him a try, Zhou Wen said. That won't do. Such a person will definitely be bribed by my brother. When the time comes, he will harm us once again. Li Xuan shook his head repeatedly. Do you think the others won't be bribed by your brother? Zhou Wen asked. Li Xuan was slightly taken aback before he smiled bitterly. You are right. As long as my brother wants it done, it's useless who I find. At least Gu Dian has a clear price. Let's be wary of him. It's better than people that put on different facades, right? Zhou Wen said. You're right. However, there were people who invited Gu Dian in the past. He didn't join either. It won't be easy inviting him to join our club, Li Xuan said with a sigh. Can you find him? Let's give it a try, Zhou Wen said. Article 136 of 1597. Are you sure Gu Dian is here? Zhou Wen looked at the myriad Buddha cave in front of him and looked at Li Xuan in disbelief. There's no mistake about it. According to what I learned, Gu Dian is a weirdo. Ever since he entered school, he hasn't slept in his dorm. As long as he's not in class, he will definitely come to Dragon Gate Grotto. It's normal for him to spend half a month here. I received accurate news that he entered Myriad Buddha Cave 3 days ago and hasn't come out yet. There's no mistake about him being inside, Li Xuan said. Do you honestly think someone can live inside here? Zhou Wen said as he pointed at the golden warriors wandering around the Myriad Buddha Cave. There were relatively rare dimensional creatures in Dragon Gate Grotto. Typically, they were at the mortal stage. As long as their numbers were few, ordinary students could handle them. However, the golden warriors in the Myriad Buddha Cave were different. Not only were they at the legendary stage, but they also had powerful defensive strength. Legendary students needed a great deal of effort to kill them. It was very difficult. Unless there was a special requirement, the average legendary wouldn't be willing to come here to kill a golden warrior. At that moment in the Myriad Buddha Cave, he could see 2 or 3 golden warriors wandering around. Zhou Wen didn't believe that students could live here for 2 to 3 days. Even if he had the ability to fight with a golden warrior, it was impossible for him to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. He would probably die from exhaustion in 1 day, much less 3 days and 3 nights. The news shouldn't be wrong. Gu Dian is a weirdo. He often does this kind of thing. No one knows how he survives in the dimensional zones, but he manages to. It's likely that he's inside the Myriad Buddha Cave, Li Xuan said with certainty. Since that's the case, let's go in and take a look. Zhou Wen had entered the Myriad Buddha Cave in-game and knew that it was difficult to kill a golden warrior. However, their speed wasn't very fast. He just needed to avoid them since he was only spending a short amount of time to find Gu Dian. Upon seeing Zhou Wen enter, Li Xuan followed him into the Myriad Buddha Cave. Seeing that someone had stepped into the Myriad Buddha Cave, golden warriors immediately rushed over. Their bodies were dark as if they were carved from some kind of jade. Every step they took left a deep footprint on the ground, indicating their extreme weight. Li Xuan drew his saber and slashed down at the golden warrior that was charging right in front of him. His saber was fast and ruthless and was transformed from a legendary companion beast. If an ordinary legendary creature were to be struck by him, they would have their bones cleaved through even if they didn't die. However, when the blade landed on the golden warrior, sparks flew everywhere, producing a sound of metallic hum. Only a faint white mark was left on the golden warrior while Li Xuan's palm went numb from the shock. It's harder than the legends say. Li Xuan hurriedly dodged, afraid to clash head-on with the golden warriors. Zhou Wen dashed in and had no intention of fighting the golden warriors. Not only were they strong, but they also possessed the talent skill, Golden Bell. Unless someone wanted to have Golden Bell drop, no one would waste their time killing golden warriors. Unfortunately, the drop rate of Golden Bell was very low, making the warriors unpopular among students. Thankfully, the golden warriors were naturally slow, so it was impossible for them to catch up to Zhou Wen and Li Xuan. As they ran, they avoided the golden warriors' attacks and entered the Myriad Buddha Cave. Perhaps it was because no one had been here to kill the golden warriors for a while, there were plenty of them in the cave. After covering a few hundred meters, Zhou Wen and Li Xuan had about 30 to 40 golden warriors chasing behind them. Is Gu Dian really here? At that moment, even Li Xuan himself doubted the authenticity of the information he had received. No matter how he looked at it, there didn't seem to be anyone here. Just as Li Xuan was about to suggest returning, he suddenly saw a golden warrior rushing out of the cavern in front of him. However, it was different from the typical black golden warrior. It was covered in golden light and there was a single golden vertical eye on its forehead. Three-eyed golden warrior. Li Xuan exclaimed when he saw the warrior. However, it was a more pleasant surprise than horror. What's that? Zhou Wen had never seen a three-eyed golden warrior. Back when he entered the Myriad Buddha Cave in-game, he hadn't ventured too deep. This was because it was too difficult to kill the golden warriors. He wasn't interested. In the time it took to kill a golden warrior, he could kill at least more than 10 legendary creatures. Three-eyed golden warriors are an extremely rare legendary creature. It should be a mutated version of Golden Warriors, however, their skills are different from that of other Golden Warriors. Typically, most Golden Warriors only drop 2 primordial energy skills, Golden Palm and Golden Bell. As for the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's primordial energy skill, it's called Invulnerable Golden Power, one that's far higher than Golden Bell. Not only is the primordial energy expenditure low, but the defensive strength is even higher. Since we encountered it today, let's just kill it first. It will be great if the invulnerable golden body drops. As Li Xuan spoke, he rushed towards the 3-eyed Golden Warrior. He used all his strength to slash at it, but the speed of the 3-eyed Golden Warrior was much faster than the typical Golden Warrior. It didn't show any signs of clumsiness. As Li Xuan slashed down, the 3-eyed Golden Warrior actually raised its hand and grabbed Li Xuan's saber in midair before forcefully twisting it. The legendary saber in Li Xuan's hand was twisted around. In the end, it couldn't withstand the terrifying force and broke into several pieces. My Frost Cicada Saber. Li Xuan felt his heart ache so much that he nearly vomited blood. He had recently been unlucky and had already sacrificed several companion beasts. Zhou Wen swept past the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's head and struck out with his palm, hitting the top of its head. With a clang, the rank 10 Ashen Palm failed to injure it. The 3-eyed Golden Warrior turned its head and struck out with Golden Palm, striking at Zhou Wen's back like a bolt of lightning. Its palm move was like lightning fast and ruthless. With Zhou Wen's body in midair, it was as though he had no way of dodging. Li Xuan was alarmed as he kicked at the 3-eyed Golden Warrior and shouted, "Old Zhou, dodge." Bang! Li Xuan's kick was rather heavy, it was enough to snap a tree that was as thick as a person. However, the 3-eyed Golden Warrior seemed oblivious to the attack as it ignored him. Without moving, the Golden Palm continued its trajectory towards Zhou Wen's back. In midair, Zhou Wen suddenly drew out a trajectory like a strange bird, dodging the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's strike. Zhou Wen, who was like an eagle, was hovering above the 3-eyed Golden Warrior. At the same time, he repeatedly struck with his palms, clashing with the 3-eyed Golden Warrior. Li Xuan, who was standing by the side, had no means to join in. Furthermore, large groups of Golden Warriors had gathered around them, instantly cutting off all paths of retreat. Article 137 of 1597. Old Zhou, there are too many Golden Warriors. I can't hold on any longer, quickly retreat. Li Xuan shouted as he dodged the power Golden Warriors. Hold on. Give me 3 minutes, Zhou Wen said. 3 minutes. Even 30 seconds would be too difficult. 3-eyed Golden Warriors are too difficult to kill. We definitely won't be able to kill it in a short period of time. Let's go back and get more people to come over. We can clean up this group of Golden Warrior hindrances before slowly killing it. Besides, I really can't last 3 minutes, Li Xuan shouted while fighting. 2 minutes, Zhou Wen said again. Fuck, if you can't kill it, my blood will be on your hands. Li Xuan gritted his teeth and summoned a companion beast armor to protect his body as he charged into the Golden Warrior's ferocious attacks, slamming one of them back several steps. If the tiger doesn't show its might, do you really think I'm Hello Kitty? Li Xuan was like a god of combat that had descended to the mortal world. His body slammed forward, his fists unleashed a barrage of attacks, and he managed to charge out of the crowd of Golden Warriors. Zhou Wen didn't have the time or mood to appreciate Li Xuan's ferocious appearance. He circled above the 3-eyed Golden Warrior like a hawk, dodging its golden palm. At the same time, he struck out repeatedly with his palm, striking the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's head. Even with the augmentation of the Lotus Bracer, Zhou Wen's might made it very difficult for him to injure the 3-eyed Golden Warrior. Every collision was like a clash of metal as sparks flew. Although it seemed to be filled with zest, Zhou Wen's palm strikes couldn't hurt the 3-eyed Golden Warrior at all. At most, it only made it uncomfortable. The 3-eyed Golden Warrior didn't feel good either. It waved its palm again and again, but it failed to even touch the corner of Zhou Wen's clothes. Zhou Wen was like a giant fly flying above it. Roar. Even the most mild-tempered Buddha would be enraged, much less an irascible warrior. With Zhou Wen enraging it, the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's palm glowed with golden light as it used all its might to strike at the airborne Zhou Wen in an indomitable manner. It's now. Zhou Wen's eyes focused as he no longer relied on his movement technique or silver wings to dodge in the air. He flattened his left hand as he sucked at the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's bloodthirsty golden palm. Zhou Wen's palm was blood red, as though it possessed an invisible force that deviated the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's palm to the side. With a boom, the 3-eyed Golden Warrior delivered its full might with golden palm to its forehead, shattering the forehead with the vertical eye as well as the golden eye. The 3-eyed Golden Warrior collapsed to the ground with a loud thud. Within its own shattered skull, there was a strange dazzling golden glow. Zhou Wen landed in front of the 3-eyed Golden Warrior's corpse and reached into its head. He pulled out a golden crystal bead the size of a goose egg. Inside it, there was a 3-eyed Golden Warrior figure shimmering. It was a companion egg. My luck with companion eggs seems pretty good at the moment. Zhou Wen reeled with joy. Old Zhou, stop staring blankly. I can't hold it any longer. Quickly come and help. Li Xuan shouted. Zhou Wen turned his head and saw that he was surrounded by a group of Golden Warriors. They were pummeling Li Xuan until he was dizzy. His armor had cracked from the beating and was about to explode. However, Li Xuan's immortal god of combat life providence and invincible Kanate divine art were really good at tanking. After being struck countless times to the point of almost being beaten to a pulp, he still remained conscious. However, the situation looked extremely bad. Zhou Wen threw the companion egg into his backpack as the silver wings on his back vibrated. Instantly, it transformed into a silver beam of light that flew above Li Xuan. He reached out and pulled Li Xuan into the air and landed on the Buddha statue on the mountain cliff. "Don't touch those Buddha statues!" Li Xuan immediately shouted when he saw this. His face was filled with horror. However, he had shouted too late. Zhou Wen raised him with both hands as he stepped on the Buddha statue's shoulder and used the momentum to once again leap into the sky. "It's over. It's over. Old Zhou. You're really trying to kill me. In the future, you should just stay at home and play games. No number of lives is enough coming out with you." Li Xuan nearly cried. There were countless Buddha statues in Myriad Buddha Cave. Before becoming a dimensional zone, there were more than 10,000 of them, but the number was inestimable after the area became a dimensional zone. In Myriad Buddha Cave, everything could be touched but not the Buddha statues. Once touched, the Buddha statue would awaken. Although it wouldn't really stand up, with the awakening of the Buddha statue, all the dimensional creatures in Myriad Buddha Cave would go berserk. Their strength would greatly increase and in addition, their bodies would also become even harder. Even their originally low speed would turn extremely fast. Just the thought of a group of accelerated golden warriors was terrifying. It was almost impossible for the two of them to escape Myriad Buddha Cave alive with their legendary stages. However, Zhou Wen ignored Li Xuan. After he leapt into the air, he landed on the legs of a Buddha statue that was sitting at a greater height. "Old Zhou, why are you still stepping on them? Do you think our deaths need to be expedited?" Li Xuan felt that his name was already written in the King of Hell's notebook. The golden warriors below couldn't come up, nor did they dare to touch the Buddha statues. As for Zhou Wen and Li Xuan, they stood there for quite a while without seeing any movement from the Buddha statues. Li Xuan looked at them in confusion. Could it be that these Buddha statues aren't awake today? "That's possible," Zhou Wen said casually as he looked around Myriad Buddha Cave. He had entered Myriad Buddha Cave in-game, so he naturally knew that the Buddha statues couldn't be touched. However, that was before he used the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. As long as Zhou Wen switched his primordial energy art to the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra, he wouldn't anger the Buddha statues no matter how much he touched them. After all, the Buddha statue was only a statue, not a true Buddha. Even a true Buddha might mistake Zhou Wen as a pious child, so it was even more natural for the Buddha statues to fail to distinguish him. This was because Zhou Wen's small perfection of Wisdom Sutra was too low. If he reached an extremely high level, most Buddha-type creatures would bow to him without daring to fight him. The Golden Warriors were, after all, low-level dimensional creatures without any intelligence, so they lacked the ability to sense such weak auras of the small perfection of Wisdom Sutra. "Old Zhou, stop carrying me. Put me down now." Li Xuan had been too nervous before, but now that he relaxed, he realized that Zhou Wen's hands were still carrying him in a princess hold without letting him down. "I think it's better I carry you." Zhou Wen didn't know if his small perfection of Wisdom Sutra could protect Li Xuan. It was fine if he stepped on it himself, but he didn't know if it was okay for Li Xuan. "I know I'm handsome, but you can't have impure thoughts about me just because I'm handsome." Li Xuan leapt out of Zhou Wen's embrace and stood on the Buddha statue's knee. Boom. As Li Xuan stood still, he suddenly felt the Buddha statue shake violently, nearly throwing him down. Its eyes suffused a golden glow. Article 138 of 1597. Chapter 138 The Ship Anchor. Li Xuan jumped in fright as he wrapped his arms around Zhou Wen's neck and hung off his body. However, it was already too late. The Buddha statue did not stop its anomalous change. The countless Buddha statues in Myriad Buddha Cave all suffused golden glows, illuminating the cave in a golden resplendence. The ordinary golden warriors' eyes also became golden. Their black jade-like bodies emitted golden glows as they stared straight at Zhou Wen and Li Xuan. "They shouldn't be able to come up, right?" Li Xuan gulped and said with some difficulty. Just as Li Xuan said that, he watched the warriors' bodies as a golden halo appeared beneath their feet and began to levitate them. This only served to turn Li Xuan's face green. "Come here." Just as the golden warriors were about to charge up with the golden halo, they suddenly heard a low and hoarse voice coming from above. Zhou Wen and Li Xuan were alarmed as they hurriedly looked up and saw that in the middle of the many Buddha statues, a person had extended half his body and was waving at them. That ferocious face that resembled a ferocious ghost was obviously Gu Dian's. "Why is Gu Dian here?" Li Xuan exclaimed. However, Zhou Wen wasn't in the mood to speak to Li Xuan. He leapt up with him in his arms as the silver wings on his back vibrated. Soon, he arrived at the spot where Gu Dian was standing. Only then did the two realize that in the middle of the two Buddha statues was a stone rift. Gu Dian retreated and let the two of them follow him into the stone rift, leading them deeper in. The golden warriors rose up with the help of the golden halo, but they didn't dare touch the Buddha statues. All they could do was surround them from the outside without chasing up to them. Zhou Wen and Li Xuan walked a distance with Gu Dian before the stone rift opened up. There was an uncarved stone cave inside. The cave wasn't small, and there was a pool below. There was clear spring water flowing in the pool, making it look very clear. There were also some daily necessities in the cave, which looked like they belonged to Gu Dian. Everything outside will return to normal in an hour. You can then leave, said Gu Dian coldly. Old Gu, we came specially for you. We plan on registering a club and wish to invite you. Li Xuan exchanged looks with Zhou Wen and directly explained his intentions. Not interested. Gu Dian said without lifting his head. Don't be in such a hurry to reject it. Our club's benefits are good. There will be quite a good membership allowance every month. Having heard that Gu Dian loved money very much, Li Xuan hurriedly used monetary incentives. 100,000 a month. I'll join if you pay me, Gu Dian said. 100,000 was nothing to Li Xuan, but Gu Dian's attitude displeased him. Furthermore, he had never heard of any club using money to buy members. Wouldn't that be a joke? Li Xuan wanted to say something but was stopped by Zhou Wen. Zhou Wen looked at Gu Dian and said, 5 members are needed to register a club. There are only 4 of us now. We wish to invite you on board, and it would be best if you are willing to join. If you aren't willing, can you help us out and register with us? Although you will be one of our members in name, you actually don't need to attend any of the club's activities or be responsible for the club. How much would that cost? 10,000, Gu Dian said straightforwardly. All right, 10,000 it is. Li Xuan, pay up. Zhou Wen agreed without hesitation, but the one paying had to be Li Xuan. Just helping in the registration costs 10,000. Isn't that a little too easy? Li Xuan said reluctantly. Anyway, I can't find anyone else. Find someone else or pay. Choose one, Zhou Wen said as he spread out his hands. Even if I'm willing to pay, I still need a signal. How am I to transfer money in this crappy place? Li Xuan said gloomily. That's settled then. You can return with us later. We'll transfer the money to you once there's a signal, Zhou Wen said to Gu Dian. Sure, said Gu Dian, and he began packing his things. Gu Dian reached out his hand for something on the mat and stuffed it into his pocket. Zhou Wen had been observing Gu Dian all this time, so his action left him puzzled. When Gu Dian took the item, he had clearly used his body to block their line of sight, as though he didn't want them to see it. However, Zhou Wen had been wearing the truth listener earring during his previous battle. Through the abnormal hearing given to him by the earring, Zhou Wen could hear the shape of the item. As truth listener only provided listening abilities and not true sight, all Zhou Wen knew was that it was a pocket watch. The exterior was likely made of metal. As for the color, it was unknown to Zhou Wen. However, there was a strange symbol engraved on the pocket watch's surface, something that Zhou Wen seemed to have seen somewhere before. After all, he had heard it without any color, making it different from true vision. Therefore, Zhou Wen momentarily couldn't recall where he had seen the symbol before. As he stared at Gu Dian, who was thinking as he was packing his things, Zhou Wen's eyes lit up. He finally remembered where he had seen such symbols. The symbol on the pocket watch was a ship's anchor, but it was different from the typical ship's anchor. On the surface was a woman's side profile. According to what Zhou Wen knew, people who went out to sea to fish in the past were very particular about women. Typically, they wouldn't let women go out to sea with them, nor would they carve women's symbols on the boat. Therefore, Zhou Wen had a deep impression of the ship's anchor when he saw it. The last time he saw the symbol was when he followed Ouyang Lan to the Ziwen crystal shop. In the room at basement 4, there was a silver-haired companion beast in chains. Behind the chain was a metal piece the size of a millstone. On the metal piece was a 9-number keypad, and on the side of the metal block was such a ship's anchor symbol. However, Zhou Wen's mind was focused on the 9-number keypad back then, so he didn't pay much attention to the ship's anchor symbol. Furthermore, the symbol on the metal piece was huge while the pocket watch was very small. Therefore, Zhou Wen took a while before recalling the matter. Is it a coincidence? Zhou Wen thought with a frown. Although the difference in size between the two symbols was huge and he hadn't seen the anchor's colors on the pocket watch from the structure of the symbol, it was indeed the same. Old Zhou, what did that 3-eyed golden warrior drop? Quickly take it out and show it to me, Li Xuan said. Zhou Wen handed Li Xuan the 3-eyed golden warrior companion egg that dropped. When Li Xuan saw it, his eyes lit up as he cried out, why is your life so good? You actually had a 3-eyed golden warrior companion egg drop. That was worth it. Totally worth it. There aren't many of these things, so even if you have the money, you might not be able to buy them. It really was worth risking our lives for it. Article 139 of 1597. Chapter 139, Working Hard to Improve. Do you like it? Zhou Wen asked Li Xuan. Nonsense. Who wouldn't? This thing can only be obtained by chance. I've only heard of it in the past. I don't even know what companion form this companion beast has, Li Xuan said. Take it if you like it, Zhou Wen said. Really? Don't you want it for yourself? Li Xuan was slightly taken aback. Of course I do. However, you have to give me the amount of money I deserve. It can't be lower than the market price, Zhou Wen said. The 3-eyed diamond companion egg might be difficult for others to obtain, but to Zhou Wen, it was just a little difficult. If he wanted, he could visit Myriad Buddha Cave multiple times in-game in the future. It wouldn't be difficult for him to obtain one. The game's companion eggs couldn't be sold in the real world, so it was best to sell companion eggs obtained in reality. Money isn't a problem, but are you sure you don't want to keep it for yourself? This item is truly rare, and even if its companion form isn't something you wish for, the companion beast is strong enough. It can be used as a meat shield and as a vanguard while charging ahead. Very few people can hurt it. It's a rare excellent grade beast, Li Xuan said. I don't need it now. If I need one in the future, I'll just get one more from the Myriad Buddha Cave, Zhou Wen said with a smile. Get one more. You make it sound easy. Ignoring the fact that three-eyed golden warriors are extremely rare, just the time it takes to spawn one takes months. And even if you manage to wait for its spawn, the chances of a companion egg dropping after killing it is less than 20%. Li Xuan looked at Zhou Wen as though he was looking at an idiot. Why are you saying so much? If you don't want it, just give it to me, Zhou Wen said as he reached out his hand. Yes. But don't regret it, Li Xuan hurriedly clenched the companion egg in his hand. Gu Dian said that the Myriad Buddha Cave would return to normal an hour later. There was still plenty of time, so Li Xuan couldn't help but incubate the three-eyed golden warrior. Wow. Invulnerable golden power. Golden palm. Double skills. Wow. Its companion form is actually a golden silk soft armor. It looks so cool. When Li Xuan summoned the three-eyed golden warrior's golden silk soft armor companion form, he deliberately walked in front of Zhou Wen and occasionally let out an exaggerated cry. Clearly, he was showing off on purpose. Zhou Wen ignored him without giving him a second look. All he did was lower his head in game. Seeing that Zhou Wen was ignoring him, Li Xuan felt a little bored. He ignored Zhou Wen and went to Gu Dian to show off. He summoned the three-eyed golden warrior and teased in amazement. Look at its body. Look at how domineering it is. It's a rare excellent grade beast. Old Gu, have you seen anyone else with such a companion beast after living in the Myriad Buddha Cave for so long? Pay me and I'll say no. Gu Dian looked up at Li Xuan with a serious expression. How boring. The two of you are really boring. Li Xuan felt that being with the two of them was like playing a zither to a cow. He felt depressed that no one was available to appreciate his splendor. After waiting for an hour, the Myriad Buddha Cave was indeed restored to normal. The Golden Warriors also returned to their original states. The three of them rushed out together and did not waste time with the Golden Warriors. After getting Fang Ruoxi and Tian Xingdong together, the five of them filled out an application form and returned to wait for the news after the submission. The school said that the club would be approved within a week. Li Xuan told them to leave the matter to him and that Zhou Wen didn't need to worry about it. Their Xuanwen club would get the approval tomorrow. Zhou Wen had no plans on bothering with it anyway. He planned on heading home to game, but unfortunately, he bumped into Wang Fei and was taken to her office. Zhou Wen, have you considered the matter that I mentioned previously? Wang Fei asked. Ms. Wang, I already said that I won't avoid it. It wasn't that Zhou Wen insisted on fighting John, but that he had nowhere to go. Alright, since you're so insistent, I won't persuade you any further. In light of how you might be representing the school in battle, you can bring up anything that you need now. The college will try its best to support you, said Wang Fei. Zhou Wen thought for a moment and said, I want the entry pass to Tiger Cage Pass and Lotus Flower Cave. I wonder if it's possible. Of course, that's not a problem. If you need anything, I can help you apply for a few more passes, Wang Fei agreed readily. Wang Fei felt gratified. Although Zhou Wen had almost no chance of defeating John, it was still worth it if this could stir up Zhou Wen's fighting spirit. That's even better. Thank you, Ms. Wang. Zhou Wen expressed his gratitude. He didn't really wish to enter to train himself with the pass, but to find a reasonable excuse for future summonings of the demonized general and using of the primordial energy skills. There's no failure when you're young. The most important thing is not to leave any regrets. Work hard and don't make yourself regret in the future. Before Zhou Wen left, Wang Fei even encouraged him. Zhou Wen felt that Counselor Wang Fei was really a nice person, but she was just too naggy. That afternoon, Wang Fei sent a few permit passes to Zhou Wen. Apart from Tiger Cage Pass and Lotus Flower Cave, there were several other dimensional zones that had been closed by the school ones that the typical student wasn't able to enter. After Zhou Wen had obtained the passes, he went to Tiger Cage Pass first. He did enter Tiger Cage Pass, but he didn't kill any monsters. He killed demonized soldiers for a while before finding a spot without any demonized soldiers. Coincidentally, there was an old, broken-down tank there. He lay down in it and continued to use his phone to grind. There were many black-winged flying ants outside Ant City. They were legendary creatures, and their combat ability was similar to the silver-winged flying ant. However, they were not as agile as the silver-winged flying ant. Zhou Wen summoned Truth Listener, the mutated lotus flower ant, the silver-winged flying ant, and the mutated demonized general in their companion beast form. Together with the blood-colored avatar, they charged towards Ant City. The mutated demonized general charged forward as the silver-winged flying ant flew in the air. Behind it were the mutated lotus flower ant and Truth Listener. The blood-colored avatar was in the middle, sending the grinding team into the black-winged ants. Despite being at the legendary stage, Zhou Wen's few companion beasts were much more ferocious than the black-winged flying ants. With one charge of the mutated demonized general and a cleave of the strange spear in its hand, it killed several black-winged flying ants. The lotus flower above the mutated lotus flower ants had spewed out large amounts of red lotus seed bullets. The black-winged flying ants that were hit by the lotus seed bullets immediately corroded away, losing their ability to fly. After landing on the ground, their combat strength decreased drastically and they were beheaded by Truth Listener's tiny claws. What shocked Joe when the most was Truth Listener. Despite its tiny size, less than the size of a palm, its claws were like a ghostly claw that could lop off a black-winged flying ant's head with one strike. Joe originally imagined that it would be a bitter fight, but now he realized that he didn't need to do a thing. All he needed to do was follow behind to pick up the items. The 4 companion beasts charged forward, and from time to time he would hear a chime. Quite a number of dimensional crystals dropped on the ground, and even a black-winged flying ant's companion egg dropped. Article 140 of 1597. Chapter 140 Golden Ant Honey. Picking up things from behind his companion beasts made Joe feel guilty of reaping the fruits of success without putting in any effort. It's no wonder so many people wanted to be a general in ancient times. With a bunch of lackeys sweeping through everything, it's truly a pleasure to reap the spoils. In a blink of an eye, he threw away the guilt he felt and continued picking things up without any qualms. 17 Valued Strength Dimensional Crystal. Joe hurriedly picked it up and allowed the blood-colored avatar to absorb it, raising his strength to 17. This was the highest attribute Joe currently possessed. The dimensional crystals produced by legendary creatures were commonly below 15 points. It was rare to see them above that. This was the first 17 points he had obtained. Ever since Joe began grinding legendary creatures, he hadn't seen 20 valued dimensional crystals. This left him somewhat worried as to how he could raise his attributes to 21. Based on his previous experience, he had to raise his attributes to the level of a mythical creature like Truth Listener so that he could advance to the next level. All the attributes of Truth Listener at the legendary stage were 21, so Joe naturally had to raise his attributes to 21. As the 4 powerful companion beasts charged forward, the blood-colored avatar had already entered Ant City. Large numbers of ants immediately rushed out from the ant nest. These ants were different from the black-winged flying ants. There were red armored ants and black armored ants, but most of them were yellow armored ants. Their numbers were terrifying, but they couldn't fly and could only attack on the ground. The blood-colored avatar and the 4 companion beasts immediately plunged into the endless sea of ants. The previously ferocious mutated demonized general charged forward. Although it killed several ants, more surged forward and pulled it deep into the swamp-like sea of ants. When Joe realized that the situation was turning south, he made the blood-colored avatar jump onto the back of the silver-winged flying ant and fly straight into the sky before flying towards the middle of Ant City. He let the mutated demonized general slow down the ant horde as much as it could. Due to the large number of black-winged flying ants killed previously, there were very few ants that could fly after entering Ant City. Using the ant nest as an obstacle, the silver-winged flying ant dodged left and right, flitting through the air swiftly as it got closer and closer to the strange ant nest in the middle. A black-winged flying ant charged forward, but the silver-winged flying ant was no longer capable of dodging. The blood-colored avatar struck out with ashen palm and struck the black-winged flying ant's head. As though it had been struck dumb, it began flying in random directions before plummeting to the ground. Joe didn't use any other primordial energy skills as their expenditure was too high, allowing him to only use them twice. Only ashen palm used a relatively lower amount of primordial energy. With Joe's natural speed of primordial energy recovery, he could barely use it for extended periods of time. However, that was only on the basis of occasional use. As the black-winged flying ants charging at him from his surroundings increased, Joe couldn't even use his ashen palm. Seeing that he was about to be surrounded by the black-winged flying ants, Joe looked at the distance between the blood-colored avatar and the ant nest. Gritting his teeth, he leapt from the back of the silver-winged flying ant and charged towards a black-winged flying ant. He took the opportunity to use Dragon Gate Fairy skill to rush to the top of an ant nest by the side. He then used the momentum to rush straight to the highest spot where the nest was glowing with a golden halo. In the nest behind him, several ants were leaping into the air in a bid to strike the blood-colored avatar. Thankfully, they were wingless red armored ants. The blood-colored avatar circled the sky with the Dragon Gate Fairy skill, causing the red armored ants to miss and fall to the ground. When the blood-colored avatar used the momentum to slide towards the golden ant nest, 2 black-winged flying ants rushed over from both sides. The silver-winged flying ant had already been surrounded by a group of black-winged flying ants. Its wings had been ripped apart and it was being eaten. There was no way it could help him again. The Dragon Gate Fairy skill was only a movement technique and not a flight technique. As Joe's strength had reached its limit and without anything to push off from, there was no way he could dodge the 2 black-winged flying ants' attack. Gritting his teeth, Joe thought of something. A green beam of light was summoned from the blood-colored avatar's palm, transforming into a little fairy sitting on a banana leaf. Before the fairy could see what was happening, the blood-colored avatar stepped on her banana leaf and leapt into the air again. However, the little fairy, along with the banana leaf, fell to the ground. It was not easy for the little fairy to regain control of the banana leaf. Her ashen face was filled with anger. She pointed at the blood-colored avatar in the sky and yelled something. With this step, the blood-colored avatar finally managed to dodge the pounce of the 2 black-winged ants. Like a cannonball, it slammed into the shimmering golden ant nest. Bam! The ant nest wasn't as solid as Joe Wen imagined. He had actually managed to open a huge hole as the blood-colored avatar rolled in with the mud walls. The scene in the nest left Joe Wen slightly taken aback. That so-called golden light wasn't treasure. The bottom half of the nest was filled with golden liquid, one that was sticky like glue. Joe Wen remembered hearing from others that some kinds of ants made honey like bees. Furthermore, these ants that could make honey were typically terrifying poison ants. However, the honey they made was a tonic that was nourishing and even had medicinal value. Of course, this was all hearsay. Joe Wen was unsure of its authenticity, but the golden liquid in the nest seemed to be ant honey no matter how one looked at it. After the blood-colored avatar entered the nest, it fell into a golden liquid. Immediately, it felt like it had fallen into a quagmire, so the more it struggled, the deeper it sank. However, after the blood-colored avatar's mouth was stained with the golden liquid, he felt a sweet fragrance entering his mouth. It made Joe Wen even more certain that it was the legendary ant honey. Consumed golden ant honey, primordial energy +1. A notification popped up on his phone screen. It left Joe Wen slightly taken aback before he became ecstatic. Just as he was about to control the blood-colored avatar to drink a few mouthfuls, he suddenly heard an ear-piercing scream. When he looked up, he saw a flying ant that looked like it was cast from gold. It angrily flew down from the top of the nest and was as fast as a golden phantom. Joe Wen was only able to see the golden flying ant's appearance when the blood-colored avatar was slain by a golden beam of light. Its head and body were separated. However, the last thing he saw was something like a cocoon floating in thin air in the upper half of the nest. It was snow white and crystalline, and he had no idea what it was. Without even having the time to look at it, the phone screen went black. Ants seemed to be born from eggs, right? That thing was clearly a cocoon formed from thin silk. Could it be that ants in a dimensional dimension can reproduce? Joe Wen found it odd. The aura from the cocoon seemed somewhat different from the golden flying ant. Article 141 of 1597.